Chapter 711 Fight Back. I've already ordered the main forces to split into 3 routes. By then, the attention of the Filrenians will surely be drawn by the large army. I'll take the armored battalion and Phoenix Vanguard to rescue Macy. They definitely won't be able to react that quickly, Caspian replied. That's indeed a good plan, but you'll be trapped in the thick of it. Even if you manage to rescue Macy, what will you do then? Dax said. I have a solution for that. Don't worry about it, Caspian said. Alright, do we need to inform the king about this matter? Dax asked. No need. His Majesty has other matters to attend to. Caspian immediately turned down the idea. Caspian knew that once Balthazar knew about his plan, he would definitely not agree. So, Caspian couldn't let him know about it. Lord Caspian, you must take care, Dax said. Don't worry, time waits for no one, so we must hurry. We'll act at midnight, Caspian said. Yes, the many generals echoed. After the meeting ended, Coco also sent a layout of the internal structure of Death Mountain Prison. Upon receiving the map, Caspian immediately studied it with Sylvia and others to plan how to rescue Macy. All troops were ready, and they officially set out at midnight. The missiles in the launch silos were also ready to be launched. At that time, the missiles would destroy the main bases of Filren. All the fighter jets were prepared at the airport and could take off at any time to strike Filren from the air. At the Andrews residence, a conversation was taking place. Diatoran is preparing for war, and war god Caspian is the overall commander of this operation. He has already rushed to West Aridlands. This is a rare opportunity for us, Jerry said. Dad, then what are we waiting for? Let's start tonight, Zane said. Yes. Now that the 5 champions are not in Dord City and there are no powerful figures around the king, this is our best opportunity, Kelvin said. It does seem like the best time now, but we still need to wait a bit longer, Jerry said. Dad, why do we have to wait again? Until when do we have to wait? Kelvin asked anxiously. We must wait until both sides officially go to war before we can act, Jerry answered. Why? Zane was puzzled. Once the war starts, Caspian definitely won't be able to turn back and save the king. By then, we can also act without worries, Jerry explained. He had been working as a high-ranking official for many years, so he had more insight than his sons. All right, we'll be patient. There's no rush for now, Kelvin said. By the way, let the subordinates of the Skyark Palace be prepared. We might need to act any time, Jerry instructed. Okay. The experts from Skyark Palace have been eager for a long time. They've been eager to show their skills, Kelvin said. Tell them that after their success, each will be generously rewarded, Jerry promised. When Filren learned that Diatoran had assembled many troops in West Aridlands, they started to panic. Byron quickly summoned all high-ranking officials for an emergency meeting. Everyone had different opinions this time around. Some asked for peace while others believed they should fight. The discussion was heated and at times uncontrollable. Byron had just taken office, so he didn't have much authority in his words. After hours of discussion, there was still no solution. It was now midnight, the time for Diatoran to take action. Under Caspian's command, the missiles in West Aridlands were launched. For a moment, the sky over West Aridlands was lit up by flames. Although Filren had anti-missile defenses, they were completely unable to withstand Diatoran's missiles. Various types of missiles exploded in Filren, rendering their military zones powerless to retaliate. They never expected that Diatoran would strike so quickly. Filren's troop had no time to react at all. What was worse, the king of Filren and the high-ranking officials were still in meeting. There was still no conclusion. In the capital of Filren, Byron and those high-ranking officials suddenly learned that Diatoran had already begun their attack. They fell into a state of panic. Your Majesty, Diatoran has launched an attack. We've been discussing it for so long, and no decision has been made. We need to make a decision quickly. We must decide now whether to fight to seek peace. Otherwise, our soldiers won't know how to respond, another high-ranking official said. Diatoran's momentum is strong now. It's not wise for us to fight back, another official said. Our country's soldiers are all elite, and our equipment is top-notch. Why shouldn't we fight? Do we want to become the laughingstock of the world? A general said. Byron was overwhelmed and had no idea what to do. He had just taken office 2 days ago, and such a big thing had happened. He really wanted to experience the feeling of leading a large army so deep down, he didn't want to seek peace. I've made up my mind. We must fight to the end, Byron said. Your Majesty, we can't do that. Vedesia and Astronia are both watching. "We can't possibly be a match for Diatoran," a general said. "Your Majesty, didn't Diatoran propose to exchange prisoners for Macy before? Why didn't you agree? Your stubbornness will only lead to heavy casualties for our soldiers," another general added. "Your Majesty, the Diatoranian troops are personally led by the Diatoranian god of war. Everyone knows about Caspian's strength. How can we possibly defeat him? Once the war starts, Filren could be destroyed." Byron had already made up his mind, but there were still so many dissenting voices. He was instantly annoyed. "Everyone shut up. If anyone dares to oppose, they'll be executed," Byron said angrily. Seeing him angry, those high-ranking officials dared not say anything more. Although Byron didn't have much prestige, he still had the power. When he saw that everyone had submitted to him, he felt extremely pleased. "Diatoran has already mobilized their troops. We can't continue to wait. We must act quickly and not let their troops enter our territory," Byron said. "Yes." Although the generals didn't want to confront Caspian head-on, the king had given the order, so they had to obey. The missiles from Diatoran's West Aridlands bombarded Filren's military zones, one after another. The important bases of Filren were all devastated. Caspian led the large army and officially set off. The million-strong army split into 3 groups and began to advance. Chapter 712 Unstoppable. Countless tanks and armored vehicles surged forward from West Aridlands. Numerous fighter jets had also taken off from the West Aridlands war zone as they were ready to strike. Those Filrenian troops had long been left stunned by the missiles, and their surroundings had turned into ruins. The high-ranking officials had just finished their meeting and hadn't returned from the capital. Filren was already in turmoil with Byron taking office. No one had expected the sudden attack from Diatoran. The million-strong army of Diatoran advanced victoriously. They sang all the way with an unstoppable momentum. Caspian, the armored battalion and Phoenix Vanguard didn't rush to act. Caspian planned to ambush when the Filrenian troops' attention was diverted and then rescue Macy. Now was not the time yet. He needed to wait patiently for a while longer. There were many obstacles in the quest to rescue Macy, so Caspian needed to be cautious. A night had passed. The million-strong army of Diatoran swept through cities and conquered territories, bringing continuous victories. Meanwhile, Filren's forces suffered heavy casualties as they were caught off guard and repeatedly defeated. When the Diatoranians learned of this news, they were ecstatic. At this moment they felt immensely proud because their country had finally become powerful. Diatoran no longer had to cater to others' whims. The era of their country being bullied by other nations was long gone. Balthazar was extremely excited to know that the troops had continuous victories under Caspian's command. Lord Caspian is indeed a military genius. Every battle he commands is undefeated, a high-ranking official said. Of course. Ever since becoming the god of war, Lord Caspian has never been defeated, Balthazar said. Your Majesty made the right choice to appoint Lord Caspian as the overall commander. An official began to flatter Balthazar. If Diatoran had a few more war gods like Caspian, I would have been worry-free long ago, Balthazar said. A genius like Lord Caspian is rare. It's not easy for one to appear. Yes, judging by the current situation, our army will soon conquer the capital of Filren. Several high-ranking officials continued to discuss. Balthazar and those high-ranking officials were ecstatic about Caspian's continuous victories, but there was one person whose face was gloomy with worry. That person was none other than Jerry. He had planned to revolt, but looking at the situation now, he dared not act easily. If he started a revolt now and Caspian found out about it, he would be doomed once Caspian returned to rescue Balthazar. Jerry wanted to see the front line embroiled in a tough battle so that Caspian wouldn't have the chance to rescue Balthazar. However, with Diatoran's forces being unstoppable, Caspian couldn't possibly be in danger, unless he informed Filren about Caspian's battle plans. Unfortunately, Caspian's plans were kept confidential. Jerry had no way of knowing them. He could only silently pray in his heart, hoping that Caspian would lead the troops personally as before. That way, he would be trapped in a siege. At South Lake City, Willow and others were overjoyed when they heard the news. It was at this moment that they realized Caspian had left hurriedly because there was a war. All the schools in South Lake City had officially begun classes today. Willow and Sherry took Cecilia to register. Caspian had already arranged a school for her. Cecilia's enrollment issue had also been resolved. After a night of great battle, bad news spread everywhere in Filren. Byron was filled with anxiety. He hadn't expected to encounter such a dangerous situation just after taking the role. Moreover, Filren's troops were completely powerless, as they were being thoroughly beaten by Diatoran. The Filrenians knew that their soldiers were defeated one after another, and they deeply hated Byron. They felt that he was utterly unfit to be their king. Some people even came to Byron's palace to demand his abdication. Seeing this, Byron could only hide in the palace and dare not show his face. He had worked hard to ascend to the position of king. He absolutely didn't want to step down so meekly. He knew that Diatoranian troops were formidable, but he believed Filren had the power to fight back. Byron had been mobilizing troops in the palace as he hoped to achieve some victories. This way, he could save his reputation. All the high-ranking officials in Filren had their own ulterior motives, and none of them were fully committed to the fight. Diatoran's troops didn't stop their pace of attack. They had to go all out to draw the firepower of Filren and buy time for Caspian. The million-strong army launched a fierce attack from 3 directions. Byron wanted to mobilize troops in the palace, but some high-ranking officials simply didn't obey his orders. Many soldiers ran away as they couldn't receive orders or reinforcements. Some generals fled without fighting and hid with their troops to preserve their strength. In the face of such a one-sided situation, Byron had no idea what to do. It was impossible for him to reverse the situation. Vidizia and Astronia dared not to intervene when they saw the formidable force of Caspian's troops. No one had expected Filren to be so weak. The new king of Estria had just taken office, and he hadn't yet consolidated his position. The whole of Estria was currently investigating the assassin who had killed the former king. They had no other thoughts to spare. After more than 10 hours of great battle, Diatoran's troops remained in place. All soldiers took a rest for a while. Although they were brave and skilled in battle, ultimately, they were ordinary people who also needed sleep and rest. Upon learning that the Diatoran's troops were resting in place, Byron saw it as a perfect opportunity. He planned to gather his troops and besiege them. However, Diatoran's troops only rested for an hour or two. By nightfall, they resumed their attack. Filren's troops had just prepared to act, but who knew that Diatoran's troops would advance again? Byron's command threw the soldiers into disarray. After nightfall, Caspian led the armored battalion and Phoenix vanguard to move out and enter Filren. Sylvia was also following Caspian. Since the million-strong army had cleared the way ahead, Caspian encountered almost no obstacles along the way. Upon learning that Caspian had personally taken action, Filren was thrown into a panic. Normally, high-ranking officials like Caspian would command remotely instead of leading the troop. However, Caspian was doing the opposite. No one could guess what his battle plan was. After Caspian left, the West Aridlands war zone was left to Dax to command. When Jerry knew that Caspian had personally gone into Filren, he was overjoyed. Sure enough, Caspian had acted impulsively as he had expected. As long as Caspian fell into danger, he could lead Skyark Palace to besiege Balthazar. By then, Caspian would be too busy fighting a war to come save Balthazar. Chapter 713, Lust. Caspian's main purpose in personally taking action was to rescue Macy. The distance between the West Aridlands war zone and the capital of Filren was very far. He had to act quickly and rescue her before she was executed. Caspian led the armored battalion and charged forward quickly. After 2 days, Caspian and the million-strong army came together. Everyone was now marching toward the capital of Filren. Upon learning the news, Byron was terrified. Although the Diatoran army was still over 100 kilometers away from the capital, they had split into several groups and came to Filren from all directions. There weren't many defending troops left in Filren at the moment. Byron quickly mobilized troops from elsewhere. Caspian immediately ordered the million-strong army to advance toward the capital together. His goal was to divert the attention of Filren's main forces. Late at night, Caspian, along with the armored battalion and Phoenix vanguard, changed course toward the Death Mountain prison. Meanwhile, the rest of the army continued to draw the attention of Filren's forces. It was 2 in the morning at Death Mountain prison. Macy was imprisoned and had no idea what was happening outside. She didn't know that Caspian had come with the armored battalion to rescue her. All she knew was that tomorrow she would be executed. At this moment, Macht suddenly felt a bit scared. She wasn't afraid of death. She just had many attachments and concerns. The thought of her parents grieving made her very uncomfortable. She also missed her teammates. She reminisced about the moments she had fought side by side with them. But the person she couldn't bear to part with the most was Caspian. She'd always admired him, but unfortunately they weren't fated. Only she knew deep down that the one she liked was Caspian. Unfortunately, he was already married. Besides, she was too embarrassed to express her true feelings. Macy knew it was just wishful thinking. She could only bury this feeling deep in her heart. The thought of never seeing him again, and never being able to be by his side made her feel very sad. Macy was about to be executed, but she had no regrets. She had long been prepared to die at any time. However, she still had many people and things she cherished. At this time, several soldiers responsible for guarding Macy began to have lustful thoughts about her upon seeing her beauty. "This woman is so gorgeous. I've never seen such a beautiful woman," said a soldier with a face full of fat. He leered at Macy. "But she's about to be executed soon. What a pity," another bald soldier said. "It'll be a shame if we don't have some fun with her first," the last soldier with a stubble said. "Yeah. Since we're the only ones guarding her, no one will know what went on here," said the bald man again. "What are we waiting for then? Let's take advantage of the opportunity and enjoy ourselves," the stubble-faced soldier said, already rubbing his hands together in excitement. When Macy heard their conversation, she was startled. They were really beasts to want to insult her like this. Just then, the iron door to the cell opened. Macy felt a bit nervous. If it were under normal circumstances, she wouldn't be afraid at all. But now, with her hands shackled, she had no chance of resistance. "What do you want?" Macy saw the three lecherous soldiers and felt a fear she had never experienced before. She wasn't afraid of being executed, but she was afraid of being violated. "We just want to have some fun with you," the stubble-faced man said lustfully. Upon hearing this, Macy became even more frightened. "Don't come near me!" she shouted angrily. However, the three soldiers completely ignored her. "Since you're about to be executed anyway, why not give us some pleasure? It'll also relieve your fear." The bald soldier chuckled. "Yeah! You're as good as dead anyway, so why not have some fun with us?" The stubble-faced man was so excited that he almost drooled. "If you continue to come near me, I'll make sure you die horribly," Macy said coldly. The three soldiers saw that her hands and feet were shackled. What could she do? If she hadn't been cuffed, they would have been afraid of her. After all, Macy was the captain of Phoenix Vanguard and had some skills. But now, she was unable to move. They weren't worried about her causing them any harm. "Come on, baby girl. I can't wait any longer." The stubble-faced man rushed forward. Macy immediately dodged to the side, and then used the iron chain to wrap it around his neck. The stubble-faced man was stunned as he didn't expect Macy to be so agile. The other two were also shocked to see this. They didn't even see clearly what had happened just now. Macy gritted her teeth and tightly strangled the man's neck. Since she was going to die anyway, it wouldn't hurt to drag one with her. If she killed them, at least she wouldn't be violated by them. The bald man and the other man wanted to rescue the stubble-faced man. However, Macy wouldn't sit idly by. She jumped and directly kicked the bald man away. "Ah!" The bald man grimaced in pain as he flew backward. Although Macy's feet were also shackled, she could still move. The bald man hit the wall hard, fell to the ground, and spat out blood. As the captain of Phoenix Vanguard, Macy had been through many battles. She was completely capable of dealing with these three. She used the iron chain in her hand to strangle the stubble-faced man and repeatedly struck his face. The other man was kicked until he vomited a mouthful of blood. He fell to the ground, unable to get up. The stubble-faced man was strangled to death by the iron chain in the end as he couldn't breathe. Two of the three men died without even touching Macy. The bald man who had fallen to the ground earlier quickly got up. He was now trembling with fear. He felt like he was looking at a demon as he looked at Macy. He had never imagined Macy would still be so powerful, even with her hands and feet bound. "I've told you before not to mess with me, or I'll make sure you'll die miserably," Macy said fiercely as she loosened the iron chain. Macy walked toward the bald man. Since she had already killed two people, she didn't mind killing the last one. The commotion had attracted the other prison guards' attention. Many of them rushed over. "Help! Someone is trying to escape!" the bald man shouted. Macy heard the footsteps outside but wasn't afraid. Even if she died, she wanted to deal with this bald man. Chapter 714: The Deafening Sound of Cannons. "Ah!" The bald man was covered in wounds as he had been kicked by Macy. He had no chance of fighting back now. But due to her restraints, she couldn't hit him too hard. If it were under normal circumstances, she would have kicked this man to death already. The footsteps outside were getting closer and closer. Macy made up her mind to kill the bald man before the other prison guards arrived. She tightened the iron chain in her hands and wrapped it around the bald man's neck. He was now left with no more strength left. His face was red from being strangled by Macy. He was struggling desperately. In the end, he was suffocated to death. In the last moment before death, he felt extremely regretful. Not only did he fail to gain any benefit, but he also lost his life. At this moment, a group of soldiers armed with guns rushed in. When they saw 2 prison guards lying on the ground and another one being strangled to death by Macy, they were stunned. "Act now! Stop her!" the leading captain shouted. The soldiers rushed over, and Macy wanted to resist. But facing so many armed soldiers, she had no strength to fight back at all. Macy was knocked to the ground, and the soldiers beat her violently. "Stop it!" the captain shouted. "Captain, this prisoner assassinated our king and killed several people. It's better to execute her now," a soldier said viciously. "You know nothing. His Majesty wants to execute her publicly. We can't act recklessly," the captain said. After hearing this, the other soldiers had to give up. "What's going on with these 3? Why did they invade the prisoner's cell?" the captain asked. "They must have been tempted by her beauty and wanted to do something to this woman, which led to the current situation," a soldier said. "How stupid. They even want to take advantage of a criminal. Don't they know that she's the murderer who assassinated His Majesty?" The leader shook his head helplessly. "But to be honest, this woman does look good. I feel a bit excited just by looking at her. Yes, such a woman is simply beautiful. Any man would be unable to resist himself. I wonder if she's skilled in bed? I really want to try her out." Several soldiers saw Macy's beauty and had some wicked thoughts. Although she looked a bit disheveled now, it didn't affect her charm at all. Macy didn't expect that just after dealing with 3 perverts, another group would come. "Captain, since she's going to be executed anyway, why don't we have some fun? Yeah, it's not easy for us to guard here in the middle of the night. It's a good time to relieve some stress." Several soldiers spoke up all at once. "If you want to play, then play. But be careful," the captain said. "Thank you, Captain." The soldiers were overjoyed. Seeing their lecherous looks, Macy felt extremely frightened. This prison was too horrible, and these people were simply beasts. With so many soldiers, she couldn't fight back at all. It seemed that she was really in trouble. The thought of being violated made Macy feel extremely distressed. "Hold her down! Let me go first," the captain suddenly said. The soldiers were surprised to see that even their captain couldn't resist the temptation. Truth be told, as soon as he came in, he had noticed Macy's beauty. He wanted to have some fun too, so he agreed to his subordinate's request. "Why are you all staring at me with such surprise? Since we're going to have some fun, let's make it interesting," the captain said. "Captain, what do you mean?" a soldier asked. "We'll record the process and post it online." "Ha ha 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 ha," the captain said insanely. "Great, that's a brilliant idea. Our troops were beaten by Diatoran with no power to fight back. Let's insult this woman and consider it revenge for our comrades. Yes, let's enjoy ourselves later." Those soldiers were practically drooling. When Macy heard their conversation, she was furious. These people from Filren were shameless. "Don't just stand there. Who's going to record for me?" "I'm going first," the captain said excitedly. "I'll do it," a soldier said, taking out his phone. 2 other soldiers held Macy down. She wouldn't just wait to be violated. She didn't want to be humiliated by these bastards. Macy immediately kicked the 2 soldiers next to her away, but more and more soldiers rushed over. "You're good at fighting, huh? Let's see how capable you really are," the captain said viciously. Seeing this, Macy knew she was in danger, but she was shackled and couldn't continue to resist. "We must control her this time," the captain said urgently. He couldn't wait to start. Then, 3 of 4 soldiers pinned Macy down. "Bastards! Let me go," she said angrily. However, those soldiers ignored her. At this point, the captain had already taken off his shirt. Macy looked at the surrounding soldiers. There were probably dozens of them, all gathered around like hungry wolves. At this moment, she experienced an unprecedented fear. As the captain of Phoenix Vanguard who had fought hundreds of battles, this was the first time she'd experienced such despair. At this moment, the captain had already taken off his shirt. However, with Macy still wearing ankle shackles, he couldn't easily make a move. "Unlock her ankle shackles," the captain said. "Yes, Captain. Should we also unlock her handcuffs?" a soldier asked. "No need, just the ankle shackles. Otherwise, I won't be able to handle it," the captain said. "Okay." The soldier nodded and used a key to unlock Macy's ankle shackles. The captain was already eager to pounce. Some soldiers had already prepared their phones to start recording. Macy felt completely hopeless. At this moment, she had no idea what to do. In the nick of time, a loud rumbling came from outside. It sounded like the noise of tanks and armored vehicles. Then came the deafening sound of cannons. The sound of screams echoed around the prison. The soldiers around Macy were all incredibly surprised, not understanding what was happening outside. The captain, who was about to take action, paused. Macy also found it strange. Why did the sounds of cannons suddenly appear? Chapter 715 Prison Siege. "What's going on outside?" a soldier asked nervously. "This is bad! Quick, go see what's happening!" The captain hastily put on his clothes and dashed out in a panic. The other soldiers knew that something was going on. They had no more intention of playing with Macy. Everyone followed the captain and rushed out. Before leaving, they locked the cell door again. Macy breathed a sigh of relief seeing them leave. At that moment, a chaotic noise came from outside. Screams echoed, and the thunderous sound of gunfire filled the air. Macy was startled by the sounds coming from outside. She wondered if Diatoran forces had come to rescue her. Little did Macy know, Caspian was leading the armored battalion and Phoenix Vanguard to rescue her. Outside Death Mountain Prison, Caspian, armed with the Diatanium dagger, led the armored battalion in a fierce attack. Caspian had changed his route abruptly tonight, catching the enemy off guard. He intended to rescue Macy as quickly as possible to prevent any unforeseen events. The minute he arrived at Death Mountain Prison with his force, they began a fierce assault. Caspian also left tens of thousands of troops to guard outside Death Mountain Prison. Once Byron learned of the situation at Death Mountain Prison, he would definitely send reinforcements. Caspian had to block the reinforcements outside to have a chance to rescue Macy. The gunfire grew more intense, and the armored battalion fought with full vigor as they launched a fierce attack on Death Mountain Prison. The prison guards were overwhelmed, unable to put up any resistance. Although Death Mountain Prison was heavily guarded, the prison guards stood no chance against the armored battalion. The armored battalion had fought alongside Caspian in numerous battles. The experience they had was not something to be compared with ordinary prison guards. The soldiers who ran out from the prison were petrified to see Diatoran's troops outside. The armored battalion had surrounded the entire area of the prison. Countless tanks and armored vehicles bombarded the prison walls, causing them to crumble. The soldiers who had just arrived outside the prison were scared and hurriedly turned back inside. They didn't want to be bombed by the Diatoran's cannons. What's going on? Why are there so many Diatoranian soldiers here? Wasn't their main force attacking the capital? Yeah, where did they come from? Why would the Diatoranian soldiers attack the prison? They must be here to rescue that prisoner, Macy. That makes sense. It's so unbelievable that they're mobilizing such a large force just for a woman. The soldiers inside the prison were terrified. The prison officer who was resting was awakened by the noises outside. "Officer, bad news!" A guard rushed in while panicking. "What's wrong?" the officer asked, still groggy. "There are suddenly many soldiers from Diatoran outside," the guard answered. "How is that possible? Why would Diatoran's troops attack the prison?" the officer asked in disbelief. "I don't know. These people seem to have appeared out of nowhere, and we completely caught off guard," the guard said anxiously. "What's the situation outside?" the officer asked again. "Diatoran's troops are attacking fiercely. We're suffering heavy losses and are on the verge of collapse," the guard said in a panic. The officer was stunned. He had only taken a nap for a moment. How could they be on the verge of collapse? The prison was heavily guarded, and their equipment was top-notch. Who could have expected that everything would crumble so easily before Diatoran's attack? "Who's leading the attack?" the officer asked. "The lighting outside is poor, so we don't know, but we saw their military flag," the guard replied. "What are you still doing here? Counter! Attack immediately!" The officer was furious. "Officer, their attack is too fierce. We can't hold on. Shouldn't we report the situation here to the higher UPS and request reinforcements?" the guard suggested. "Regardless, we must stop Diatoran's troops from advancing. Before the reinforcements arrive, we must hold this place. The prison is filled with dangerous criminals. We can't afford any problems," the officer said firmly. "Yes!" The guard immediately ran out, and the prison officer was about to make a call to report the situation to the higher-ups when another subordinate rushed in. "Sir! Bad news!" the guard exclaimed anxiously. "The Diatoranian god of war Caspian is leading the armored battalion to attack us," the guard said. Amidst the chaos, he saw the armored battalion's flag and also noticed a powerful man leading the attack. "What? Caspian is leading the troops?" The officer was shocked beyond measure. "That's right. I saw it clearly." The guard was anxious. "Are you sure you're not mistaken? Caspian is the overall commander of Diatoran's expedition. How could he personally lead an attack on our prison? The officer still couldn't believe that Caspian was outside. I saw it clearly. It's Caspian, the guard said firmly. Could it be that he's here to rescue Macy? Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Upon hearing this, the prison officer had a sudden realization. There was only one explanation. Caspian wouldn't lead his troops to prison without a reason. Besides, he even brought the most fearsome armored battalion. There was only one possibility: Caspian was definitely here to rescue Macy. Immediately relay my orders to counter attack. I'll report the situation to the higher ups immediately. The officer didn't dare to be careless after knowing Caspian was leading the attack. Any delay and they might lose the battle. The title of the Diatoranian god of war was not just for show. The officer didn't dare to be overconfident and think he could withstand Caspian's assault. The higher ups were shocked beyond belief upon learning about the situation near the prison. Understanding the severity of the situation, they immediately reported it to Byron. When Byron heard that Caspian was leading the siege, he wasn't scared but excited. He believed that this was absolutely the best opportunity to capture. Caspian had only brought the armored battalion, which wasn't a large force. In Byron's view, Caspian was seeking death. Without further ado, he ordered the prison officer to hold on at all costs. He would immediately send reinforcements and then encircle Caspian, completely annihilating his forces. Chapter 716, Holding the Line. After making the arrangements, Byron felt quite pleased with himself. Caspian, they say you're an invincible god of war. I wanted to see just how terrifying you are. Who would have thought you'd be so arrogant? You brought this upon yourself, so don't blame me for being ruthless, he muttered to himself. Ever since the attack began, the Filrenian forces had been consistently losing, which made Byron extremely frustrated. He knew that if things continued like this, he would soon be ousted from power. Just when he was at a loss, Caspian provided him with a perfect opportunity. He felt that if he could eliminate Caspian, it would surely sow chaos among Diatoran's troops. That would give him the chance to lead a strong counterattack. Hence, this was an extremely rare opportunity. Byron ordered half of the soldiers in the capital to eliminate Caspian. In his view, Caspian's solo infiltration for the sake of rescuing a woman was just plain foolish. What general would endanger himself to save a subordinate? Upon receiving the orders from Byron, the soldiers of Filren's capital immediately headed out, ready to coordinate with their comrades at the prison to besiege Caspian. The garrison of the capital numbered about 600,000, with half of them previously dispatched to fend off the Diatoranian forces. Now, nearly 200,000 were sent to eliminate Caspian, leaving only about 100,000 defenders in the capital. At Death Mountain Prison, the prison officer led his subordinates to confront Caspian's forces. However, these prison guards were no match for the armored battalion. Caspian even dispatched his trusted confidant Sylvia to command the battle. Despite the prison's defensible position, they still struggled against the ferocious assault from Diatoran. Seeing the prison already in ruins from the bombardment, Caspian waved his hand and shouted, "Charge in!" He had long anticipated that Byron would send reinforcements, so he aimed to rescue Macy in the shortest time possible. Upon his command, Sylvia led the armored battalion and charged forward. There were tanks at the forefront, followed closely by numerous soldiers. The prison guards were powerless against them. The prison officer was astonished to see his subordinates falter against Caspian's assault. In less than 10 minutes, Caspian's forces were already on the verge of entering the prison. With the current situation, they couldn't hold on much longer. Terrified, the officer hurriedly reported the situation to the higher ups once again. However, they informed him that reinforcements were on their way but would take some time, and urged him to hold out as long as possible. If he failed to hold out, he would be punished with the death penalty. The prison officer also knew that reinforcements wouldn't arrive anytime soon. The only option now was to continue holding the line. The internal structure of the prison was complex, but if they could utilize the terrain well, they could definitely delay Caspian for some time. Once the armored battalion entered the prison gates, they halted and ceased using cannons. Otherwise, if the prison was bombed and Macy was killed inside, it would be a tragedy. "Charge in and rescue our hero, Macy," Caspian ordered again. Upon hearing the command, the armored battalion and Phoenix Vanguard immediately jumped off their vehicles. They launched their attack. The members of Phoenix Vanguard were full of vigor this time, as they were determined to rescue their captain. There were about 100,000 armored soldiers, and not all of them entered the prison. Most of them remained outside to continue standing guard. Caspian and Sylvia simply led the charge inside. Coco had previously provided Caspian with the internal layout of the prison, so they were familiar with its structure. This kind of attack was extremely advantageous for them. Macy's heart leaped with joy as she heard the gunfire getting closer. Clearly, it was Diatoran's forces breaking in. However, she still didn't know which specific unit was coming to rescue her. At this point, chaos reigned within the prison, and nobody cared about Macy anymore. In the face of attacks from the Armored Battalion and Phoenix Vanguard, the prison guards had no capacity to launch a counter-attack. Caspian wanted to save Macy as soon as possible, so he charged inside the prison first. He gripped the diatanium dagger tightly and fought fiercely in the prison. In such close quarters, he preferred the short and swift style with the dagger. Since Caspian knew the prison's layout, he led his men to search for the place where Macy was being held. Since the inmates were all serious offenders, Caspian searched each cell and executed anyone who wasn't Macy. After all, these people were extremely guilty. Killing them wouldn't be a loss. The prison officer trembled in fear when he saw that he was at a disadvantage. The higher-ups had already ordered him to hold on, but he was no match for Caspian. If the reinforcements didn't arrive soon, he would lose. In his desperation, the prison officer came up with a plan. He wanted to use Macy as a hostage because that way Caspian wouldn't dare to act recklessly. "Hurry! Come with me to tie up Macy!" the officer shouted loudly. When the guards heard this, they immediately led the way to where Macy was being held. Meanwhile, the army sent by Byron was on their way, but they fell into an ambush shortly after setting out. Many Diatoranian soldiers suddenly emerged from both sides of the road and caught them off guard. There were also continuous landmine explosions on the road. The 200,000 troops of Filren exploded and died tragically. These Diatoranian troops had been arranged there by Caspian long ago. This road was the main road to the prison, so the probability of Filren's reinforcements passing through here was high. "Don't panic. We outnumber them. Start the counter. Attack immediately." Filren's general immediately calmed down and directed the operation. Naturally, he had some skills to take on this command. However, with the gunfire sounding everywhere, nobody listened to his orders. The sudden cannon left the enemy troops bewildered. Many of them lay on the ground as they were too scared to move. In a moment, the battlefield turned chaotic, with nearly half of the 200,000 troops helpless. Suddenly, a bomb exploded in the crowd. The deafening sound reverberated. "Get down!" several guards shouted. They lay on the ground and protected their commander. The force of the explosion was so great that for a moment, dust filled the air. Many people were temporarily deafened. The enemy general was nearly killed by the blast. He was frightened and lay motionless on the ground. With no one commanding the troops now, almost half of them were dead or wounded in less than half an hour. Seeing his troops in disarray, the enemy general's mind was in turmoil. If things continued like this, his entire force would be wiped out. "Return fire! Why aren't you returning fire?" The enemy general stood up and roared. Chapter 717 Let me carry you. At this moment, the enemy forces finally realized their situation. Waiting around would only lead them to their doom. If they didn't fight back, they would be left with no choice but to face death. Soon after, these enemy troops began to retaliate against the Diatoranian forces on both sides. Although the enemy forces were numerous, half of them were already dead or injured. There were about 60 to 70,000 armored soldiers sent by Caspian. Each was highly combat effective. At this moment inside Death Mountain Prison, Caspian was leading Phoenix Vanguard and was unstoppable. They encountered almost no resistance because these prison guards were no match for them. The prison officer and his men arrived at where Macy was held. "Get her out immediately," the officer shouted. Time was of the essence and he had to take Macy with him. She was his last card to play. The officer and a dozen prison guards rushed into Macy's cell. She knew that Diatoran's forces must already be on their way to rescue her. These prison guards were probably planning to use her as a hostage. But how could Macy, who had undergone rigorous training, surrender willingly? She jumped up and kicked the two guards charging toward her. The thought of those guards trying to defile her filled her with rage. Since Macy's ankle shackles were open, she was able to move freely. With two muffled sounds, she kicked the guards and sent them flying. Seeing this, the prison officer and his subordinates were shocked. They were surprised as to how Macy could move freely and wondered where her shackles went. Before they could react, Macy launched a fierce counterattack. The unprepared guards were easily defeated. "Capture her at all costs," the officer shouted. The remaining guards swarmed in. They refused to believe that they couldn't take down Macy. As the captain of Phoenix Vanguard, Macy had faced many challenging situations before. She wasn't afraid of these prison guards. Despite still being handcuffed, she easily dealt with them. Several guards were kicked to death by Macy. Seeing her formidable skills, the officer panicked. His men were powerless against her. He had hoped to use Macy as leverage to protect himself, but now he found himself in a predicament. With this realization, the officer turned and fled. After witnessing Macy's skills, he dared not lay a hand on her. If things continued like this, he might end up being the one kidnapped. All he wanted now was to leave as quickly as possible. However, as soon as the officer ran out of the cell, he was stabbed through the heart by a dagger. He looked up and saw that the one who attacked him was none other than the Diatoranian god of war, Caspian. Macy was about to chase after him when she saw Caspian appear outside the cell. The diatanium dagger in his hand had pierced the officer's heart. She was incredibly shocked and couldn't believe what was happening before her eyes. Caspian had personally led a team to rescue her. He was the Diatoranian god of war, yet he was risking so much to save her. Macy was both shocked and delighted. Her emotions were extremely complicated at this moment. Caspian and the members of Phoenix Vanguard arrived just in time. Seeing the prison officer trying to escape, Caspian dealt him a fatal blow. "See! Caspian!" Right after the officer uttered Caspian's name, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Caspian withdrew his diatanium dagger, and blood gushed from the officer's chest. He fell heavily on the ground. "Macy!" Caspian put away the dagger and approached Macy. "Captain, are you all right?" The members of Phoenix Vanguard also rushed to Macy's side. "Lord Caspian, why did you come too?" Macy asked excitedly. "I'm here to take you back," Caspian said calmly. Macy was overwhelmed with excitement when she saw Caspian and her former comrades here. She had thought she was doomed this time. Who would have expected that her beloved Lord Caspian would personally come to rescue her? For the sake of her safety, Diatoran had directly declared war on Filren. At this moment, Macy was on the verge of tears. When Caspian approached her, she suddenly felt weak in her legs and almost fell. She'd been enduring the pain all this time. Coupled with the torture she had endured and the recent fight, she was already covered in injuries. She had been holding on all along. But when she saw Caspian and the others, she finally couldn't hold on any longer. Caspian quickly went up and held Macy's slender waist. She fainted in his embrace. "Macy!" Caspian called out loudly. "Captain, are you all right?" The members of Phoenix Vanguard were also anxiously calling out. Just as Caspian was about to carry Macy out, she slowly opened her eyes again. "Lord Caspian, I'm fine, don't worry, I'm just too exhausted," she said weakly. Everyone was relieved to see Macy open her eyes. "You must have suffered a lot." "Let's go, I'll take you back to Diatoran," Caspian said. "But I don't have any strength now," Macy said. Caspian looked at her and saw that she was covered in injuries. Even her ankles were bloody. "Let me carry you." He couldn't bear looking at her miserable appearance. He decided to carry her out. After all, Macy was a hero of Diatoran. "That's quite embarrassing." Macy was surprised. She couldn't even imagine that Caspian would carry her out. It was too embarrassing. "You've performed well on the mission. Now that you're injured, it's only right for me to carry you out," Caspian said. Then, he took off his coat and draped it over Macy's body. Seeing Caspian, who was usually serious, suddenly being so warm, heated made Macy's heart flutter. "Thank you, Lord Caspian," she said. "There's no need for these formalities. You're the hero of Diatoran," he said. Caspian used his dagger to cut off Macy's handcuffs. At this moment, Sylvia also rushed in with her team. "Macy, are you all right?" Seeing Macy's miserable state, Sylvia asked with concern. "I'm fine. I didn't expect you to come too, General Frost." Macy was happy to see Sylvia and the armored battalion. "You're now a hero in everyone's eyes. Since even Lord Caspian had come personally, how could I not come?" Sylvia said with a smile. "Sylvia, please help me hold my dagger," Caspian said. Chapter 718, A Bold Decision. "Yes!" Although Sylvia didn't understand why, she immediately complied. After Caspian handed the dagger to her, he lifted Macy with both hands. Macy's heart raced, and her face flushed. Caspian actually wanted to carry her with so many people around. She felt a bit overwhelmed and shy. But since Caspian didn't say anything, she simply wrapped her arms around his neck. This was probably her only chance to get close to him. The reason Caspian personally carried Macy was that he felt she had made significant contributions this time. She even assassinated Camden. She was now a hero of Diatoran. As the Diatoranian god of war, it was only appropriate for him to carry her out. The members of Phoenix Vanguard and the armored battalion were deeply moved to see Caspian carrying Macy out. Caspian treated his subordinates so well. He carried Macy in his arms and walked out of the prison cell while Macy walked in front with the soldiers to clear the way outside. In truth, Sylvia's heart was now filled with envy toward Macy. She wished she were the one being carried. The Phoenix Vanguard members stood by, guarding Caspian. At this moment, Macy felt like the happiest woman in the world. She even felt like she was dreaming. She had infiltrated the enemy country and accomplished the assassination mission. Although she was heavily injured, being in Caspian's arms this instant made her feel extremely happy. Though she was a brave warrior as the captain of Phoenix Vanguard, deep down, she was also just a woman. Being held by Caspian like this made all her suffering worthwhile. The armored soldiers outside were extremely excited to see Caspian carrying Macy out. They had initially thought the rescue mission would be very dangerous. However, seeing Caspian bringing Macy out safely put their mind at ease. After Caspian carried Macy out, he immediately had the accompanying military doctor provide her with emergency treatment. Macy didn't want to leave Caspian's embrace as she wished to be held by him forever. "Tear this place to the ground," Caspian instructed Sylvia. "Yes," Sylvia acknowledged. She went outside and ordered the troops there, under Lord Caspian's command, tear this place to the ground. The armored battalion immediately began bombarding the prison. In the next moment, cannons filled the sky. Death Mountain Prison was left crumbling. Some of the prison guards inside wanted to hide and wait for the bombardment to end before making their escape. Little did they know the prison collapsed directly and buried them all alive. In just a few minutes, Death Mountain Prison became a ruin, and everyone inside perished. At this time, Caspian received a call from the armored battalion's commander, Yura House. "Lord Caspian, the new king of Filren did send troops to reinforce Death Mountain Prison," Yura said. "How many soldiers did he send?" Caspian asked. "About 200,000 soldiers, mostly from Filren's capital. That's more than 3 times our number," Yura replied. "I didn't expect this." "Is Byron betting everything on this?" Caspian said. "Lord Caspian, how's the situation on your side? Has Macy been rescued?" Yura asked. "I've rescued her, and Death Mountain Prison is now in ruins," Caspian replied. "In that case, let's hurry and join forces to annihilate these enemy troops," Yura said. "Hold your position first. I have a more important operation to do," Caspian answered. Upon hearing this, Yura was stunned. Was Caspian abandoning them? "May I know what your plan is after this, Lord Caspian?" Yura asked. "Filren's capital has less than 1,000,000 troops, probably around 600 or 700,000 now. With Byron sending so many reinforcements, there shouldn't be many troops left in the capital. This is a rare opportunity for us. I plan to lead the armored battalion and Phoenix Vanguard to attack the capital." Caspian revealed his plan. Originally, he intended to join forces with Yura to eliminate the incoming reinforcements after rescuing Macy. However, it seemed that Byron no longer had many troops by his side. In war, one must adapt to circumstances. This was an excellent opportunity. As long as they could take down the capital, they could seize control of the entire Filren. "What, Lord Caspian, you plan to attack the capital?" Yura was shocked. "Yes, this opportunity is rare. If I attack Filren's capital, I can capture all the high-ranking officials of Filren. With that, this war can end in the shortest possible time," Caspian explained. "Lord Caspian, you're bold and meticulous. I truly admire you," Yura said. "Yura, listen to my command. You must do whatever it takes to delay those reinforcements. Do not let them return to defend the capital. When I lead the troops into the capital, they'll surely be in chaos," Caspian ordered. "Yes, I'll complete the mission at all costs," Yura replied firmly. After that, Caspian hung up the phone. He looked at the members of Phoenix Vanguard and the armored battalion. He ordered, "Everyone, listen up. Filren's capital now has very few troops. We'll attack their capital directly." "Yes," everyone shouted in unison. Knowing that Caspian would lead them to attack Filren's capital, the armored battalion and Phoenix Vanguard were extremely excited. They were now motivated and full of fighting spirit. "This battle is crucial for us. As long as we can break into Filren's capital, the entire nation will be finished. We must go all out to win." Caspian emphasized. "Understood," the soldiers shouted. "Let's move out." Caspian didn't waste any more time and immediately gave the order. The armored battalion and Phoenix Vanguard immediately set out. Macy, who was bandaging her wounds, was extremely excited upon hearing this news. "Hurry and help me dress my wounds. I want to join the battle with Lord Caspian later," Macy urged eagerly. "Captain Osborne, your injuries are too severe. You can't take any more risks. You should heal your wounds first," the military doctor advised. "I'm the captain of Phoenix Vanguard. I want to fight alongside everyone. Moreover, the outcome of this battle will determine the overall situation." "I wish to participate," Macy insisted. "But your injuries are too severe. I'm sure Lord Caspian won't allow you to continue fighting," the doctor said. "Enough. I've made up my mind. Hurry and help me dress my wounds," Macy urged impatiently. Caspian led the army down a side road. They passed through a tunnel in the mountains behind Death Mountain Prison and saved a lot of time. Chapter 719, Attacking the Capital. At this moment, Byron was still immersed in his own happiness. He was still thinking that his troops might have already annihilated Caspian's forces. He had been waiting for news all this while. As long as Byron could destroy Caspian, he could build his reputation and solidify his position. By then, Filren could also sound the horn of a counterattack. They might even seize the opportunity to take down Diatoran. However, despite waiting anxiously, he hadn't received any news from Death Mountain Prison. In the end, he couldn't wait any longer and immediately made a call to inquire about the situation. "How's the situation on your end?" Byron asked. The one who answered the phone was the commander of the 200,000 soldiers sent as reinforcements. "Your Majesty, we haven't even reached Death Mountain Prison. We were ambushed halfway," the commander replied. "What? You were ambushed?" Byron was astonished. "Yes. We're currently fighting back with all our might," the commander answered. "How could they know that we had sent reinforcements? Could it be that Caspian is really that extraordinary? And how's the situation at the prison?" Byron asked with a trembling heart. "I don't know either. Right now everything is chaotic on our end, and we have no time to focus on the situation at the prison," the commander said somewhat resentfully. He never had much confidence in the new king of Filren. He had no talent for leading troops in battle. He was just giving random orders. "Regardless, you must eliminate Diatoran's troops at all costs." "I'll immediately inquire about the situation at the prison," Byron said before hanging up the phone. He then dialed the number for Death Mountain Prison. However, after dialing for a long time, he couldn't get through at all. At this moment, Byron began to feel afraid as he had a foreboding feeling. Death Mountain Prison was already in a precarious situation. Without reinforcements, they would surely be defeated soon. Now that he couldn't even get through to them on the phone, there was only one possibility: the prison had already fallen. Byron suddenly panicked when he thought about the little over 100,000 troops and how Caspian's forces were nowhere to be found. He felt that with Caspian's character, it was very likely that he would lead his troops to attack them. Just as he was about to call the commander of the 200,000 soldiers who were sent to reinforce the prison to instruct them to return and defend, an urgent call came in. "Hello? What's the matter?" Byron asked. "Your Majesty, bad news. Caspian is leading the armored battalion and has arrived near the capital," the officer in charge of defending the city said anxiously. "What? How could Caspian arrive so quickly?" Byron was trembling with fear. "I don't know, but I can assure you that it's Caspian's troops. I've already seen the insignias of the armored battalion." "There's no mistake," the officer replied. "Organize the troops immediately and stop Caspian. We must defend the capital." Byron was in a panic. "We only have a little over 100,000 troops. How can we deal with the god of war?" The officer was not confident in battling it out with Caspian. "The capital is as solid as a fortress. Caspian won't be able to break in so easily. Moreover, there are only a few armored soldiers. There's nothing to fear." Byron pretended to be calm. "Your Majesty, I think to ensure nothing goes wrong, it's better to have those reinforcements return to defend quickly," the officer suggested. "All right, I'll order them to return immediately," Byron said urgently. After hanging up the phone, he immediately called the commander of the reinforcements. "Your Majesty, we're currently in a fierce battle here." "What's the matter?" the commander asked. "Caspian has led the armored battalion to attack the capital," Byron said urgently. "What? Is Caspian really so audacious?" The commander was extremely shocked after hearing this. "Yes, Caspian is the devil. He wants to take down Filren," Byron said. Your Majesty, I heard that since Caspian became the Diatoranian god of war, he's never been defeated. You must be careful, the commander said. You must bring back the majority of your troops immediately and defend the capital, Byron ordered. Your Majesty, we're currently engaged in an intense battle and can't withdraw at all. If we retreat now, we'll definitely be treated as sitting ducks. Casualties will be even heavier, the commander said. You have nearly 200,000 troops there. If you don't return to defend immediately, the capital may be breached by Caspian. The entire Filren will be finished. You should understand the severity of the situation, right? Byron said angrily. This person actually wanted to disobey his orders. My troops have already suffered heavy losses, and even if we return to defend, it won't make a difference, the commander of the reinforcements said. Even if only a handful of soldiers remain, you must come back to me, Byron said angrily. I understand. I'll eliminate the enemy as soon as possible and then support the defense of the capital. The commander was also helpless. All right, hurry up. The capital is as solid as rock and can hold out for a while. I'll wait for you to bring back the reinforcements, said Byron. At this moment, Caspian, accompanied by the armored battalion and Phoenix Vanguard, had already arrived outside the capital of Filren. Macy, with her wounds bandaged, rushed over. Macy, shouldn't you be resting? Why did you come along? Caspian asked, looking at Macy, who was all wrapped in bandages. Lord Caspian, all of you are in battle, and I don't want to stay idle. I want to fight alongside my teammates, Macy said. You're seriously injured. You should rest first, Caspian said. The battle is extraordinary. Only I understand the fighting style of Phoenix Vanguard. I've only suffered minor injuries. I can still fight. Lord Caspian, let me fight with my teammates, Macy requested. All right, since you insist, I won't stop you. But you must still take care of yourself and not overwork yourself. Caspian could only agree to her request as he knew about Macy's stubbornness. Lord Caspian, rest assured, I know my limits. When should we launch the final assault? Macy asked. Let's start now. First, let the armored battalion attack. Phoenix Vanguard will remain on standby, Caspian said. Why? Macy asked in confusion. Let the armored battalion use heavy weapons to destroy the enemy's defenses first. Then, Phoenix Vanguard will charge out, Caspian explained. Understood, Macy nodded. She unconditionally trusted Caspian. In terms of tactics, Caspian was much more skilled than her. Attack the city, Caspian ordered from atop his war chariot. In an instant, the sky was filled with countless cannon shells raining down on the capital of Filren. The defenders of Filren were bombed into a bloody mess. However, they had received advance notice and were prepared to counter-attack. The battle between the two sides instantly entered a tense phase, with heavy weapons being used on both sides. Chapter 720 The Andrews Family. At this moment, Byron was still in a conversation with the commander of the reinforcements. Suddenly, he heard the cannons outside the capital, which startled him. I have to go. There's the sound of gunfire outside the capital, which means Caspian's troops have started firing at us, Byron said. I understand, Your Majesty. I'm now preparing to lead the troops to a life-and-death battle with Diatoran. You must hold on to the capital. Once I eliminate these enemies, I'll rush back to support you, the commander hurriedly said. Byron grunted in acknowledgement and immediately hung up the phone. A minute later, another urgent call came from the commander defending the city. Your Majesty, bad news! Caspian's troops have begun to attack, the commander said urgently. I know. What's the situation? Do you have confidence in holding out? Byron asked with concern. If Caspian and his troops could breach the capital directly, his life would be at stake. We can definitely hold out for a short period, but if this continues, I'm not so sure, the defending commander replied. Don't worry for now. I've already contacted the reinforcements. They'll support us soon. By then we can make arrangements inside and outside to annihilate Caspian. Right now, we just need to hold on, Byron said. How long will it take for them to support us? The defending commander asked. They should be coming soon. They've already launched a full-scale attack with 200,000 troops. It should be more than enough to wipe out the armored battalion, Byron said. All right, we can hold out for some time anyway. Let's hope they arrive soon, the defending commander said. Yes. You'd better lead the soldiers to defend quickly, Byron said. Outside the capital of Filren, the armored battalion was launching a fierce cannon assault. Although the Filrenian troops were trying their best to counter-attack, they were struggling. The battle between the armored battalion and the reinforcements from Filren had entered a tense phase. However, the armored battalion, with their extensive combat experience, still had the upper hand. At Balthazar's mansion in Diatoran, he learned that Caspian had risked his life to rescue Macy. This left him unable to sleep as he eagerly waited for news of Caspian. "Report! Your Majesty, Lord Caspian's troops have successfully rescued Macy," a guard reported. "Excellent! Lord Caspian is truly unstoppable!" Balthazar exclaimed excitedly. "Your Majesty, it's late at night now, and Macy is safe. You should rest early," the guard suggested. "I'm so excited right now that I don't feel sleepy at all," Balthazar replied, filled with excitement. A few minutes later, another guard rushed in. "Report, Your Majesty, I have the latest news," the guard exclaimed. "Speak," Balthazar ordered. "Byron sent troops to Death Mountain Prison, but they were intercepted by the ambush set up by Lord Caspian," the guard said. "Excellent." With Lord Caspian's strategic planning, he must have anticipated Byron's next move. So he sent people to prepare for an ambush early on. "With such a victorious god of war, how could Filren be our match?" Balthazar laughed heartily. The soldier continued. "His Majesty, there's another war report. Lord Caspian has now led his troops to launch a surprise attack on the capital of Filren. Lord Caspian's move is truly ingenious. Byron must now have very few troops left. Lord Caspian's ability to adapt on the fly is admirable." Balthazar became even more excited. He never expected Caspian to be so bold to want to wipe out the entire Filren. "That's right, Lord Caspian is truly formidable. It's so remarkable of him to conceive such a battle plan," the guard added. "Lord Caspian has never been defeated. It's only a matter of time before he takes down Filren," Balthazar said confidently. "Yes, perhaps the new king of Filren will soon be ousted. As long as Lord Caspian breaches the capital of Filren, Byron will have nowhere to escape. Praise Lord Caspian! He's only been on the expedition for a few days and he's already reached the capital. He's truly impressive. Lord Caspian is invincible. We just need to await his good news," the guards exclaimed excitedly. At the Andrews residence, a conversation was taking place. "Dad, it's the middle of the night. Why did you call us here?" the eldest son, Kelvin, asked. "If I called you here at this time, it must be because I have something important to tell you," Jerry said. "What's going on? Please tell us quickly. I'm about to fall asleep." Zane yawned, struggling to keep his eyes open. "The time for our uprising has come," Jerry said. As soon as he finished speaking, the Andrews brothers' eyes sparkled with excitement. The two brothers had longed to take action, but their father had always restrained them. Thus, they kept waiting for an opportunity. Now that the opportunity had arrived, they couldn't contain their excitement. "Dad, why so sudden? Why is now the best time for an uprising?" Kelvin asked, puzzled. "Caspian has taken his troops to the capital of Filren and launched an attack," Jerry said. "What? How is that possible? It's only been 2 or 3 days and Caspian has already reached the capital of Filren." The Andrews brothers were shocked, exchanging disbelieving glances. "That's right. I've received accurate information that Caspian is currently in the midst of chaos and definitely can't extricate himself. So now is our chance," Jerry said. "But Caspian has only been on the expedition for a few days, and he's about to take down Filren. What if he finds out about our uprising and returns to provide support?" Kelvin asked worriedly. "It's impossible. Caspian definitely can't extricate himself right now. If he abandons the attack on Filren's capital, the Filrenian troops will surely pursue him relentlessly, which will cause him heavy losses," Jerry said. "You're right. It seems like this is indeed our best opportunity. As long as Caspian doesn't come back, the other 4 champions are not to be feared," Zane said. "Yes, but we still need to act low-key. It's best not to alarm the other 4 champions. This way, we can capture the king with minimal cost," Jerry said. "Don't worry, the experts in Skyark Palace are numerous. Ordinary people won't notice our actions," Kelvin said. "In that case, let's not wait any longer. Prepare yourselves. We'll move in an hour," Jerry said urgently. "What? So soon?" Kelvin asked. "Time is of the essence. We must seize the opportunity. We must take down the king before Caspian breaches the capital," Jerry said. "What's wrong? Are you not fully prepared?" "We're ready at any moment. As long as you give the order, we can set off now," Kelvin said.